Gathered here to honor the worth of every individual, try to build justice through ethical relationships that are open, compassionate, honest. If it's your first time, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. For those of you new to the building, there's a unisex bathroom right here on this floor, a water cooler in the corner, ladies' room upstairs, and a men's room downstairs. If you have a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind muting it, but keep it on and post what's going on here. Get the word out to people so this issue is more in the forefront of their thinking. I want to thank, in particular, the leaders of Philadelphians organizing to witness, empower, and rebuild, our interfaith coalition known as POWER, and the many volunteer leaders, as well as the leaders and staff, clergy leaders, lay leaders who do the work and inspire us every day. I think that each one of you who do this work, organizing, leveraging political power, marshaling coalitions, so that you can build a more ethical world, deserve a hand today. We need more of this work every day. I serve here as the clergy leader, and we gather on Sunday mornings to try to inspire each other, to plan, to support each other, to celebrate, but mostly to try to work to live more ethical lives. Part of that work is changing the society that we live in. I want to particularly thank Sylvia, who's done a lion's share of the organizing tonight, and is one of my inspirations. The Defenders Association and the Community Bail Fund and other groups work every day on this issue, and here at the Ethical Society we're very pleased to be able to have people here working on those issues. About 4 years ago, many of our members read The New Jim Crow, and right after that we held a criminal justice reform summit here. Many of you attended. And at that gathering, we learned and we relearned again that the power and racism that has fueled and continues to fuel our inhumane, retributive, and vengeful criminal justice system needs to be stopped piece by piece. It's a system that does not distinguish between hardened criminals and young people who might make a mistake. It's a system that humiliates and traumatizes rather than guides and uplifts. It's a system that does not make us safer, but actually deepens the poverty and the desperation of so many people in this city, on our neighbors, our fellow citizens, on our streets, in our schools. I think we've seen some progress in some years and some setbacks. Probably the biggest setback has been the degree of hate and bigotry at the highest levels of the federal government. And that drifts down to supremacist marches, and it even drifts down to how people interact with each other on the street and at our local Starbucks around the corner. There is some progress that I think we've made. I think we can take some joy in a police advisory commission that seems to take seriously what happened at Starbucks as just a sign of a larger systemic racist paradigm that needs to be deconstructed. Now we need to continue to increase their budget and give them some enforcement power. That would help. I think we can be proud of a district attorney who takes seriously the issue of deconstructing systemic injustice in our criminal justice process. And I know I'm feeling a lot of hope for what happened on Tuesday in Philadelphia, where over 1 million previously disenfranchised people got to vote after coming out of the criminal justice system so that they can live a life that's constructive. So there are reasons for hope, but we still throw so many roadblocks in the way of people trying to walk the path of redemption in their life. Progress is slow. The criminal justice system has many issues. Ending cash bail is just one of these issues, but it's something that we really have the potential of doing now. Those who are, due to poverty or bad decisions or an unjust system, who are thrown into the criminal justice system cannot get out to defend themselves due to the inability to meet cash bail. I hope that we together in this work, and people who are working on this every day, can make a difference. I urge you to take this issue to those people who don't know anything about it. This is a win that we can have in this city now, and it's time that we have it. So with that, I want to turn it over to Sylvia Metzler. Thank you for coming tonight, everybody. I also want to give a shout out to Kate Esposito, who led our work on the minimum wage for city workers and city employees. And on Tuesday the 20th at 1 o'clock in the City Council chambers on the 4th floor of City Hall, come for the Labor Committee hearing and vote on this important piece of legislation. There's a flyer in the back and information on the back of the sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. And thank you all for being here tonight. When I know some of you really want to be down at City Hall protesting, do not shut down the Mueller investigation. I'm sure there's some people who plan to come tonight who are there right now, and that's great. That's a great place to be. But I hope they'll come here when it's over. We can't let the Mueller investigation be stopped. Couple things. Even though there's no admission fee tonight, there are 2 collection plates on the back table. We're collecting money for POWER, Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild, and for the Community Bail Fund. So when you're way out, if you have a few extra dollars, if you wouldn't mind putting them in the collection plate. Also, there's some petitions, if you haven't already signed the petitions. They're addressed to City Council and the Mayor to do away with the cash bail system. I'm just thinking briefly, I live in Kensington, and a lot of my neighbors, young people, I'm thinking of some young men who have a wife, a girlfriend, and a kid or two, live in an apartment, and they could be walking down the street and stop to talk to some of their friends on the corner who are selling drugs just when the police come by, and they pick them all up. And if that young person who has a job and a family doesn't have bail, you know what happens? They lose their job, probably lose their apartment, causes all kinds of stress for their family. This is such a common scenario here in Philly and cities all over the country. We've got to do something about it. So tonight, we're going to hear some experts telling us about the problems and some solutions. And then we can't just walk out. At the end, we've got to say, okay, we got a commitment, we've got to do something about it. This is the third in a series of panels about the cash bail system and trying to educate mainly the congregations of POWER, but also all of our neighbors and friends about what the situation is and why we need to change it. The first one was at Summit Presbyterian Church, and there's a synagogue there too that they jointly sponsored it. The second one was at the Central Philadelphia Monthly Meeting, and this is the third. If you belong to a group or organization and you would like to have one of these panels, let me know and we'll help you set it up. Now I'd like to introduce Elder Melanie DeBose. She is the pastor of the Tabernacle. I have to look at my notes, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting them. The pastor of the Evangel Chapel. And she's a member of POWER, and she co-chairs the Live Free Committee, which is a committee dedicated to doing something about improving our criminal justice system. Pastor Melanie.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. If you can see me, clap once. If I'm looking good, clap again. That helps me get some perspective as to where you're seated. This is an indication that I don't have any sight. And that's a recent development within the last 2 years. But I have insight and I have vision. Amen? Amen. Amen. So I'm very glad to be here. I am one of the clergy leaders or the founding pastors of POWER, Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild. I'm also one of the co-chairs of our Live Free strategy team. In addition to that, I am the current pastor of Evangel Chapel, which is at Germantown and Susquehanna, in one of the most marginalized communities in our city. It is what Eddie Glaude referred to as an opportunity desert. And while the opportunities for prosperity and building oneself up is limited, the opportunities to get arrested, the opportunities to be on drugs, the opportunities to live in an abandonmenium, the opportunities to live from hand necessarily know where your next anything is coming from, those opportunities run rampant. So when I learned of the development of an organization such as Power, which is now one of the greatest social justice entities in the state of Pennsylvania, and I dare say in this region, when I learned of the work that Power was reaching out to do, I said to myself, self, this is the support you need for the ills of this community. So you will do yourself a service by taking a look at Power's website, and you will find that we're steeped in issues of economic justice. We're steeped in issues of climate justice, criminal justice, educational justice, racial justice, and we are determined through moving legislation around this state and around this nation and in this city, we are determined to make a difference and to be a voice for the most marginalized citizens of our community. The last thing I want to tell you about us is that, as I mentioned, I am one of the co-chairs of Live Free, which is one of our strategy teams, and it is the reason for this convening, if you will. Live Free is a two-legged entity. It's a two-legged beast. And on one hand, or on one leg, we address issues of mass incarceration. The other area of focus for the Live Free strategy team is policing the police. And sometimes those things go hand in hand. Because as was mentioned by Sylvia and certainly by Hugh, our most marginalized citizens are often incarcerated just for reasons of standing on the corner while being black or brown, walking the streets of Philadelphia while being black or brown, or just trying to live their lives in their black or brown skin. And our focus, what we have found is that there is an enormous number of people who live in incarcerated spaces and have not been able to get out simply because they can't make a bail, which is often under $1,000. The other end and the other tragedy of that is that in many cases, within a number of months, while all of their other rights and privileges have been lost, within a number of months, they find that they are being dismissed from prison without a charge, or jail without a charge. So we are working, as has been mentioned, to end this process of cash bail for most of our citizens. They're being locked up. They're being locked up without real probable cause. Their constitutional rights are being violated, and we are here to say enough is enough. Enough. So Power has joined with the illustrious Keira Bradford Gray and her team, and because we were developing a teach-in, and we found out what she was doing through the Defenders Association, and we're like, hey, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. She's doing this and she's good at it. So we stand with her, and she stands with us to communicate the importance in this systems training of knowing who we are, what it is that we have to do. And I am proud to be here because, as I said, I pastor in a community in which the pain is greatest, in which most of your black and brown citizens, I happen to have a mixed congregation, and I'm told that I have the right personality for what it is that I'm called to do. Because even without sight, I'm a bad mama Jim.
she could hardly speak. She had been on a bullhorn on election day, getting people out to vote, and lost her voice, but it came back, didn't it? All right, now it's time for our panel. So I'm going to call them up, and first is Peter Bradford Gray, Chief Defender, Defender Association of Philly, to reduce the nation's prison population and combat racial disparities in the criminal justice system. Next, Kurt Watkins, he's the Chief of Adult Social Service in the Defenders Association of Philly. Karen Chapman. Karen's with the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, also with the No 215 Jail Coalition and a community organizer. Bill Cobb, former deputy of the ACLU Campaign for Smart Justice, member of a number of boards, Defender Association of Philly, and the Philly Legal Assistance and Community Legal Service. And last but certainly not least, and this is a change on our agenda because Patty Jackson is sick tonight and unable to come, and her friend Rusty Bentley has decided that she will speak for her. Thank you so much, Rusty. Rusty is an organizer with the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund and also with the People's Paper Co-op, a women's reentry program.
Good evening, friends. I say friends because obviously those welcomes and the sentiments that you gave in the beginning really kind of sparked a new energy in me that I understand who I'm amongst and what you believe in, why you're here. And you're here because you believe in the right for people to have a prosperous life. And that's what we're here for. And so I'm glad we're here to talk about how the criminal justice system kind of interrupts that opportunity for many people. And as you said, there's often very little differentiation about who is in this system. We have a very backwards analysis about what we're doing with people once we stick them in this system. We wait and wait and wait until they become the most desperate they can be. And then we decide, you know what? Maybe there is no reason to hold them here. Or maybe there's a way that we can get them back to the streets by having them plead guilty to a misdemeanor crime so they can get probation and go on and live their merry lives. Well, as we know, that is not an option for many people. Many people, when you take away what little supports they have, it's very hard to rebuild. It would be hard for me to rebuild after being missing from my life for 3 to 4 months. So imagine those who are really living, like Pastor Melly said, hand in mouth, day by day, not really knowing what's going to happen to them, and now kind of scrambling to get back to whatever they thought they had to begin with. So with that, I am going to talk about how ending cash bail can help solve or make progress in some of these areas. And I know that this has been a very highly, I would say, controversial subject for some people, because people have this false fear that if we end cash bail, crime is going to go up. Well, we're here to tell you that's not true. We have now reduced our prison population through a number of different initiatives by about 2,000 since 2016, so in the last 2 years. And we have not seen an enormous spike in crime. In fact, crime is still at the same rate. And we have not seen just this horrible, I guess what I would call an apocalypse, because of we're being smarter with our criminal justice resources. So one of the things that the Defender Association is here to do is to really connect your communities in real ways and bring information to you as insiders in the system to really show you what's going on and the opportunities we have to do it better. And we do that through an initiative called Participatory Defense. So I'm just going to talk briefly because I know we have a lot of panel members with some really great information. I'm just going to go through this really briefly because even after this discussion, after someone is out in pre-trial as they're fighting their case, there's still a lot of work to do in the system so that the right decisions are made and the right outcomes are actually given. So participatory defense is a way that the Defender Association goes out and trains groups about the system's process. It's a very complex system. And the system's complexities have never lended itself to transparency that it needs. So we are now mapping our system structure, teaching people about each hearing in the life of a case, and helping them help us by getting information that will make those hearings go much better. So some of these things that are on the slide are all the goals for participatory defense. But our next slide will show you exactly how we do it. I'm sorry, Mandy, can you go to the slide with the map, the systems map? This is how we start. Does anyone know what this is? Anyone who's never heard this before? Does anyone know what this is? This is actually a felony case, one felony case. And as you can see, if you get arrested for a felony case, there are, can you just go back to the whole thing? And if you get arrested for a felony case, there are about 7 different hearings one would have to go to. And that's if everything goes the way it's supposed to, right? Because oftentimes there are continuances and you have to come back. So on average, someone could come to court or have to come to court about 12 to 13 times on one case. Imagine the types of decisions that people are making if they have to interrupt whatever life they have, if they are just now on a job where they can't miss work, if they have childcare, if they have transportation issues, and I'm sure the community, the Alpha people will talk all about these things. But imagine how disruptive that could be to someone who doesn't have the supports necessary to do this. And so what we do is we help them make better decisions about how to strategically create opportunities so each of those hearings can go better. And if they can't make it, we have advanced information so that we can relate to a judge or a district attorney to offer or to accept a service for them and put it on a date that is more convenient to their life. Especially, they're not dangerous to the community, they're not a flight risk, so allow people to resume their lives. So this is really helpful in allowing these participatory defense hubs to educate people on how to navigate this system and get the best outcomes. And it has been working in tremendous numbers. And this has been very quiet, it's not been hailed, but people are getting tremendous outcomes that would never have been possible, but for the ones who love them, family members, community members who know much more about the person and the social conditions that they find themselves in, that is finally making its way into the legal advocacy. Finally, the only way to combat the racial bias is to humanize this system. And this system has dehumanized people, and the process is so dehumanizing, we have left out the individual and their opportunities in this whole decision-making process. So this has been giving us much more information as public defenders. It has been allowing us to talk about not just the case and the facts, but the person, the reasons why a person would be here before us, the opportunities to divert them out of the system and put them into real treatment programs or community-based programs that can help them stay progressive. But most importantly, it allows the judges to understand that a person's life matters to someone. And that has not been something that we've seen in this system for a very long time. Often someone sits alone with no family, not that they don't have anyone that cares for them, but because this is a very isolating process. Most people don't understand it, don't know their power, and this has, in no pun intended, created the power, transformed the power of the landscape of the criminal justice system back to the people who are now going to be stuck with the decisions that a judge makes on a person that is returning back to their community. I don't know if many people talk about what we see in our system, but 65 to 70% of the crimes are not extremely violent. They are social in nature. They are drug related. They are mental health related. They are lapse in judgment. They are those types of things where I think we can be much more creative in our approach to solving some of our challenges. Let's stop letting the prison guards or asking the prison guards to do the jobs of the social service professionals who go to school and get trained to do this. There are so many people that want to help, and I just think they don't know how. And so tonight, we're going to be talking about ways that people can help. And one of them is coming up with alternatives to the cash bail system. The alternatives, as we've been seeing, have been working. And what those alternatives are is very simple. community has stepped up and filled in the gaps that meet the goals of the cash bail. The goals of cash bail are to ensure someone's return to court. The goals of cash bail are to help people stay arrest-free while fighting their case. Well, things are happening in the city, and I'm going to give the mic up so we can hear all the great things that the Community Bail Fund is doing, as well as our social services, who we changed our structure and started to put social services on the front end, and we've been able to get great outcomes. People whose cases are dismissed are still in programming. People want to change some of their lives, and when you treat them as human beings, they have more of an energy and commitment to do so. And it is not just talk, it is not just feel good, it is fact. And we haven't really compiled a lot of statistics yet. We are doing that, but I can't wait to show you, because I feel it in my bones and everything in my being that what we're doing is right. And we're going to prove our city, its system wrong, that we do not have to incarcerate our way to public safety, because one, we know that doesn't work. So thank you so much for coming here to listen to us tonight, and I guess I'll be back at some point for questions and answers.
Hi guys. So I'm from the Defender Association. I'm Chief of Adult Social Services, and I'd like to, first of all, thank you for having us here. I want to echo some of the things that Keir has said tonight, but I also want to tell you what a tremendous difference it's made to move our social services intervention with our clients to the front end, as opposed to waiting on the back end for folks to become more desperate. You guys, folks who live in Philadelphia understand that Philadelphia, one of the benefits is, to living here and in this city, is that we have 1,100, 1,200, 1,300 different social services programs in the city. There are all kinds of services to address mental health, all kinds of services to address substance abuse, all kinds of services to address any kind of social services issue that a person may have. The problem is that most of these services are not connected to clients at the correct time. They're connected to clients when they have become the most desperate. They're connected to clients when they are perhaps the most resistant. We have found that by connecting the social services agencies, supports, and some of the resources that folks don't even know about, small agencies, faith-based organizations and institutions, to folks at the front end, we can not only prevent them from being incarcerated in the first place, but we can engage and prolong their exposure to the treatment services from the very beginning. It's been tremendous for us to do this. We see a lot of benefit to this, throughout the city. It's just fantastic. And so I just wanted to kind of say that to you guys that, really, to be honest with you, there's no other way other than connecting folks before they get incarcerated to services, as opposed to waiting in the back end. The system basically has been that way for maybe 20 or 30 years, and it really hasn't worked. What you've seen once folks have become more become resistant or become more desperate is that they actually don't stay engaged with treatment services. They drop out. By connecting folks in the front end, they stay engaged, they stay hopeful. We can bring those providers into court, and they can speak on behalf of the clients who are engaged with those services. It helps our advocacy. It helps our understanding. It helps us to advance the fact that, lapse and relapse are different things. And so we're not only learning more about how to connect people to social services, but learning about the timing of connecting them too, which I think is very valuable. So I know I'm going to get into some questions and everything. I'll be able to answer those a little later, but I really wanted to tell you that timing is an issue. Connecting, resources to people at that certain time is really critical. So thanks.
Hi everyone. How y'all doing? I've been really honored to be here on this stage, always with Keir and Philip and Kurt and Rusty, and for the speakers, Pastor Close, who came before. Always feel humbled just to be a young organizer up here with folks doing this good work too. I'm with the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund and the No 215 Jail Coalition, and I'm sure that I'm mostly interested in just answering any questions that people have, but I'll give a little bit of background on our work and kind of how we got to where we are now. So I joined the No 215 Jail Coalition in 2014. And just to give a sense of also the sea change that's happened in Philadelphia in criminal justice reform since then, when I joined that work, we came together to stop the city from buying land to build a new jail, which was going to be a larger jail than the existing House of Correction facility. And that was because they were under threat of lawsuit to shut down HOC because of those horrible, inhumane atrocities that are happening in that facility. Now, HOC, that same jail, we said at that time 4 years ago, no, you're not going to build a new jail. We stopped them from buying land to build that jail, but we also said the reason you're not going to build a new jail is because you need to shut down HOC and not build a new one, actually just shut it down altogether and bring people home, and bring our neighbors home, bring the people we care about home. They don't need to be in jail in the first place. They need to be at home because 75% of the people in the Philadelphia jails are just waiting for their court date, haven't even been convicted of a single thing yet. 4 years later, that jail is depopulated. There is not one person in the House of Correction. It's not been demolished yet, knowing that, but that's huge. Now we have a district attorney that's progressive. We have Keir Bedford Gray, who's an amazing. We're amazingly lucky to be in a city when the Defender Association itself is advocating for participatory defense. We've been in community across the country with different cities who have participatory defense programs that are all led by organizers on the ground, which is also happening here, but in deep partnership. And sometimes there's not that same partnership. So that the jail population has dropped significantly, partly thanks to many different initiatives, the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge, and the District Attorney, and the Defender. So that's the good news. I think what's really important about this moment in Philadelphia, from my perspective as an organizer, is that we're right on the edge of transformative reform. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen real transformation. We've seen steps. We've seen good steps. We've seen Krasner cut bail for 25 different charges. We've seen the Defender Association put some bail advocates in place so people have counsel. We've seen early bail review after 5 days, people get a hearing. But we haven't seen transformative reform like the Movement for Black Lives and the National Policy Table is advocating for, like the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund stands for, where we're not assessing people's risk, we're actually looking at what they need, we're looking at the supports that need to be in place for people, and we're decarcerating to the greatest extent possible. The vast majority of people should be home, should not be in cages, period, should not be on electronic monitors, should not have an ankle monitor, should not be on house arrest, should get to be with their families, and should get the support they need to be able to attend court. So I think that's what we're looking towards as we're talking about ending cash bail. It's more than just ending wealth-based detention, that's one piece, but it's actually ending pretrial detention as much as possible. And then I'll say a little bit about the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund and then pass it to Rusty. You can speak a little more about our work too. I learned a fancy word recently for what we do, which is called prefigurative politics, which is cool. But basically, we prefigure the world that we want to see. So we're trying to live into reality, the fact that in our own communities, with our own resources, we can get people free, and we can show the city and the system what we need to be doing, which is we just pay bail for people, and then they come home. And it's that simple. And then they await for court, and then they go to court. Right? And it's not that simple, because it's actually a horrible mess after you've been traumatized by being in a cage and you lost your house and you lost your job and you haven't been separated from your kids. So it's not just a big happy picture that we're painting. It's like being really in close community and loving relationship with people who have been put through atrocities and trauma. But it is that simple in the sense that we're proving and showing that there's a way that people can be treated with dignity and that humanity can be respected in this system. So I'll leave it at that. We posted bail for 90 people now.
Yes.
Who would not have been able to
Rusty Bentley. I'm her. I'm mom. I'm grandma. I'm that one that was in prison. I'm that mom that's dealing with her now. As my daughter had a case, she's home now on house arrest thanks to the hub. Thank you. Which is sad, but we can hold on.
And the hub is the community.
Yes. She was in a car accident 2 years later. She had to turn herself in, return to you guys. Philadelphia Bail Fund, also family member, my partner, she was incarcerated. So I decided to participate, because I've been incarcerated, was detained, couldn't come home. Well, my son was dealing with a disability. He came out to have anxiety, depression, separation. It's called anxiety separation. When your mom is not in the same home with you, you become depressed and you get anxiety. And he's pretty young, you know. Now, I'm here now in a reentry program, which is called People Paper Co-op, where us young ladies, all mothers, aunts, sisters, grandma, which is I, able to get the help to return back to home, return back to my education that I missed, or that mother, or that bill that I was unable to pay, or that job I lost, which I am living today. You know, and I'm just here if, you know, any questions on how I live with it and how dear, you know, we do have help, and also, you know, what we can do and things that I have learned to like share on us parents today, where we can get strengthened and have a cash bail to, you know, release us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Cobb. As I was introduced as the former National Deputy Director of the ACLU's Campaign for Smart Justice, which is their campaign to reduce the number of people in jails and prisons nationwide by half while combating racial disparities in the criminal justice system. And we use an integrated advocacy approach of litigation, legislation, communications, and organizing. And I started advocating in 2014 after being released from employment. But I was released from prison in January of 2000 after serving 6.5 years for pleading guilty to robbery, kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, and violation of the Uniform Firearms Act right here in the city of Philadelphia. And so after just advocating professionally for 14 years and having the opportunity to build coalitions across the entire country between government and nonprofits and grassroots organizations and celebrities and multinational companies. The opportunities that are afforded us here in the city of Philadelphia are to literally model what it looks like to reform bail practices in a big city. We know that Washington, D.C. has taken steps and measures, and so have some other places across the country, but Philadelphia is unique in terms of the opportunities that we have to create the kind of change that will not only positively benefit the citizens of Philadelphia and surrounding counties, but also when we execute something successfully here in the city of Philadelphia, it is a model for other places across the country. And so I've really just been investing my time back in the city of Philadelphia since I left in August, in empowering and connecting leaders and advocates with opportunities and resources and networks so that we can continue to build infrastructure here in the city of Philadelphia, because what I frequently say are that systems of oppression are hyper-resilient. So while we are working to eliminate cash bail, there are energies and efforts to significantly increase the number of people in jails and prisons, and we're all watching it happen right now. We're all doing something about it if we care about immigration. In a very short period of time, the numbers that we have been able to drive down, they've been able to increase by detaining people who are coming to this country seeking asylum. There are children who are now locked in cages. There are adults who are locked in cages. And this is an attempt and an effort to make sure that those numbers don't decrease significantly, because it has a deep economic impact on the communities that use mass incarceration to actually employ people or to build construction projects or to just keep economies going. And so working with all sorts of people who study finance and economies and identifying ways for communities to not invest in prisons in order to sustain themselves economically, but to do other things. There are lots of things that we have to do in order to create an environment where all people are treated equally and where justice is available for anybody who comes in conflict with the criminal justice system. I really appreciate the efforts of my colleagues here and everyone on this stage as we tackle this very particular thing. But when I'm in audiences, I'm asking for people to actually identify something that they're very passionate about as it pertains or relates to social, economic, or justice, as it pertains or relates to mass incarceration or criminal justice reform, and make an investment of time and money. As you can see, there are many experts who have dedicated their entire lives and their professional careers to affording justice through these systems that were not set up to produce outcomes that are beneficial to all of us, but really kind of sort of make profit possible for other individuals and people. And I'll say that because as a national criminal justice reform advocate who's been driving all sorts of these changes, it literally almost always comes down to money. Literally just always does. When you are very close to getting a piece of litigation passed or legislation or implementing some legislation that's supposed to drive some sort of change, if you are not aware of the economic impact that it has on the people that have a different point of view, or the community, or the government, then you are literally leaving some responsibility on the table as a leader who's trying to drive systemic economic change, or long-term systemic change. It's been a long day, folks.
So we have a time for questions and answers. I would urge that you do that. Actually, ask questions and let them answer. And as we go on in the evening, it might loosen up a little bit, but I'd really like to hear some of the expertise. So if you would like to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. When you hold the mic, please hold it halfway through. Don't hold it down here where the antenna is.
Hello, this is mostly a social work question for you. So I'm trying, like, in terms of frequency, so you say you have 100 people, random people. What are your top 5 or 10, I don't know, service linkages? How effective are some of them? Like, wow, this is incredible, whereas some of them are like, eh. This is a separate part of the same question. Out of 100 representative people, how many have committed really a violent crime where somebody either was hurt or very seriously might have been, like really hurt?
Awesome question. Listen, this is really at the heart of the issue of what it is that we do in social services. About 70% of folks that we see have drug and alcohol issues, and those issues are significant. But very, very few of those folks are engaged in any kind of crimes of violence. These are usually self-destructive acts. Sometimes they're possession, things like that. Drug and alcohol treatment is by far 3/4 of the services that we connect folks to in my work. The second level would be mental health. Around 35–40% of the clients that we see have a significant mental health issue. Even in those situations, violent crime for that particular group is very, very low. The third group is a mix of drug and alcohol problems and mental health together. Co-occurring disorders, double trouble, things like that. That's also very common. And then I would say maybe a distant fourth, we would have homelessness or homelessness-related issues, and those are the services that we would provide. In general, in terms of the interventions and things that we find, what is almost always requested is inpatient treatment, but that's very misunderstood. Inpatient treatment is typically medically related. It's not necessarily related. These are hospital beds, okay? So it's not a matter of folks being locked away, and none of that's necessary. None of that is part of what it is that we do. Some of the best treatment here in Philadelphia occurs in outpatient settings, intensive outpatient settings, where folks go several times a week for several hours a day. And those treatments are very effective. They're nationally proven to be effective. And then, on top of that, we have case management. And case management services kind of fill in the gaps for those. What was the other part of your question?
Yeah, can I piggyback on that? I want to really quickly piggyback on. I don't think it works yet. Is it on? It helps when you cut it on. Thank you for that question, sir. but I want to be responsible and indicate to people that a classification of violence versus nonviolence hurts our ability to drive change significantly. I'm going to be a little personal. Remember, I pled no contest to the plea of robbery, kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, violation of the Uniform Firearms Act. What I did in the participation of that crime was drive a car. I was a full-time college student. I was in the Air Force Reserve. I had just served honorably. I did 10.5 months before I was able to meet a bail because it was a violent classification. It was very high. So what I would ask anyone is to consider it an individual case and not even consider the judicial outcome or whatever jargon is related with whatever conviction of what sort it is, because a classification of violence in the criminal justice system doesn't mean that anybody is violent, has the capacity to be violent, will be violent again, or were ever violent. And so we have to be very mindful as people who want to see significant change come forward, whether or not we are cannibalizing our own efforts before we even begin. And so thank you for that question. And so it's one that really charges everybody because we don't want to be hurt. And the assumption is that somebody's been classified by the criminal justice system as violent, that they will potentially hurt us, or they need to be locked in a cage to prevent from hurting us. And I just think that the response to putting a human being in a cage is something that doesn't help us produce the outcome that we ultimately want.
I do. Can I please? First of all, it was so well stated, Bill, because what he's saying is what we see. There's titles in the criminal justice system that don't delineate what the actions really are. We have cases where people are charged with burglary because they banged on the window and they pushed the screen in. While yelling through the door because they're really upset with the person inside, never attempting to go in. But this is how these are classified. When there was marijuana cases that were being actually prosecuted, it wasn't charged as a person had marijuana. It went down as violation of the Uniform Drug Act. So no one can delineate based on the titles that we put in the system what the actions really are. And oftentimes the titles allow people to be treated as if they're monstrous rather than the persons who they were. So this humanization, this is real. And this opportunity to individualize what people are, what their opportunities are, to change their behavior or fix or right the wrongs that they may have created because of a lapse in judgment or a one-time event that's not really associated with who they are in their hearts. We rarely get that opportunity with a system that's so overburdened and less interested as to who the people are, but more interested in the narrative that will be told. But one of the things that you said I want to address, and this is what we keep asking in our office all the time: what is working and what is not? That is something that our city has yet to address, and we have sought to help that. So with all the people that we have, that we put in through social services, we want to track how they do. Did they complete the program? Did they leave the program? Did they find the program not even something that's not even helpful to them? I always say this: the criminal justice system is the largest system that we pay for, right? We pay billions of dollars, and it is the only system that is not accountable for producing what it's supposed to, which is rehabilitative resources for people that they say need to change. When people don't get what they're supposed to get from these programs, guess who's the only person that gets hurt? The individual that needs the help. When the Obama administration started looking at healthcare, they started levying penalties against hospitals that had high rates of readmission. Because they said, if people keep coming back in high rates, it can't be them. It has to be something wrong with your process that is not allowing people to make sure that they get the information and the treatment that they deserve. The criminal justice system has no such accountability. And so our office has worked and partnered with some techno-savvy folks, and we created with the help of the people that are techno-savvy, an app called Donify. And it is an app that identifies many of the services that are in the city. We're hoping to build that app to actually have a feedback feature, meaning someone can rate their experience in that. Because the people who go through this system are never asked, How was your experience? What did you get out of that? And our city pays billions of dollars for programming that we do not understand if it's working or not. So we've got to get a better grasp on that, because recidivism is not just a word, it's actually a lifestyle. And I think the people that keep cycling back and forth from in the system deserve better. If they are programming that are not working, then we need to stop paying for it, and we need to demand more out of our tax dollars.
May I ask for the name of the app again?
Donafy. Donafy. You can download it, please. Give it to, it was designed to help people figure out what services were in their immediate neighborhoods so that they don't have to only get it when they come into contact with the criminal justice system. If you need mental health service, you need housing, whatever that is, you type in that, your zip code and what you need, and it brings up all the services that are in your neighborhood or area that are there to help you. Housing, food, whatever it is. LGBTQ, specific services, whatever that is. And so we're right now in negotiations with some corporations to increase that usability for that app.
I'm going to urge that people, if you want to ask directly, I'll remind you the names of our panelists from left to right. It's Keir, Kurt, Kara, Rusty, and Bill.
Hi, Nick Sanders. Nick Sanders with the Ethical Society. I think this is a follow-on question to the social service and other services that are there. It's more directed toward the community bond fund, though. I'm interested, well, it's sort of a two-part question, because with bail you can pay and be responsible for the person's appearing, or you can just pay and you lose the money then. So I'm interested in what the community bail fund does pay, which direction it goes. And secondly, especially if you take responsibility, I'm interested in the basis, the criteria that you use to decide, because you said, I think you said 90 are out on bail now that you have, which is impressive to me, but my guess is you get many more requests than that. So you make some judgments here, and I'm very interested in what you're saying, because I see that related too to the direction as to how the courts might be making such a decision.
Thanks for that thoughtful question. What was your name? Nick. So the first question, how we actually pay bail and the responsibility there, we actually have an arrangement. There's something in Philadelphia that allows for this to happen. It can happen, for example, with lawyers too. It's called a bail assignment. So a person can designate that their bail money be returned to a different entity or lawyer organization. So we pay bail under the person's name as the surety who we're posting for, so that they're responsible for attending court dates and things that happen after that. But it does revolve to us, assuming that person attends their court dates and the bail is not revoked. And now it revolves 100% thanks to a recent change. That was, I don't know if folks know about that, where people kept 30% of bail fees. The city was stealing money from the poorest people in our city to go into the pockets of city council. Anyway, that's over now. So,
Thanks to community, yes.
Thanks to a lot of advocacy actually from folks that we bailed out, who were some of the people who directly pushed city council members to be questioning the courts on that. The second question, how do we make our judgments? Yes, that is the question I always get. So the first thing I'll say is we have no criteria. Intentionally, for the exact reasons that Bill Cobb was saying. We don't believe that, we treat people as innocent until proven guilty the way that the system should be treating people. So when we work with people, we don't make any judgments as to their guilt or innocence. We don't even require them to share the details of the circumstances of their arrest unless they want to. However, we do take very seriously what supports a person and anyone in their family or community. We always talk to a support person on the outside as well. What supports or needs that person has in order to feel like they themselves are safe and people in their community are safe. So we're looking at needs, we're looking at supports, but we're not looking at assumptions. We don't believe that charges should ever be determining whether a person is held in a cage or not, because charges are determined by police and by prosecutors. So that's just saying that what the police say is whether or not someone should be in jail. Now, if you believe that what the police say is whether or not someone should be in jail, then you probably wouldn't be in this room, to be honest. But I think that we're intentionally trying to challenge this idea that certain people are worthy of being home before court and that other people are not worthy of that, and that certain people, especially with bail, it's particularly obvious because it's literally an amount of money. Someone in your same position who had that amount of money would already be home. So we're just filling in the role of your rich uncle that is someone else's playing, right? So, but in terms of how we prioritize it, because we do get way more requests than we can take, obviously, we are looking now at, we have a rapid response process for cases that are more urgent. So situations like a severe medical need that's not being met on the inside, like pregnancy, like someone who's been criminalized for being a survivor of abuse, for example. So a variety of situations where there's more urgent. Someone who's a primary caregiver for children who's separated from their kids. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember all of them. A severe mental health crisis that's not being addressed, someone who is not getting the medication they need on the inside. And at times we also prioritize things that are political in nature, or when there's an act of extreme racism or race-based violence on someone. So that's sort of how we have a group process. We're collaboratively run. All of us are volunteers. There's no one who's paid to work for us. So it's a very intentionally collective process of how we make decisions also that tries to lift up the vision and leadership of folks who themselves have been formerly incarcerated and sort of loved ones in our communities. So, yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. I have a couple questions and a comment. Here in Philadelphia, the average night, how many people would you say are locked up? I'm originally from New York. I lived up there for over 60 years. And I would say that the New York City Police Department is very corrupt and very racist and trigger happy when it comes to black and brown communities. I'd like to know, is false arrests a big problem also here in Philadelphia? Because it is a very big problem in New York. And also, would you, since we have these progressive DAs and what have you, would you raise the issue of political prisoners, because we do have them in Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania? Thank you.
So I guess I can answer the question about how many arrests we have per day.
People locked up, the average.
Yeah, our office does arraignment court, so that everyone in the city who gets arrested, our office represents them at the first appearance. So on average, our office gets about 75 to a little over 100 people per day that are arrested. Not all of them are locked up, but arrests that occur per day are still running pretty high. When they come into an arraignment, that means the district attorney has accepted that petition from the police to say charge this person with this offense. Now, like you said, it doesn't take much for people to come into this system on a charge, on an arrest, average citizens. But we do see a difference when it comes to police officers who commit offenses. The type of determinations that they get from the very beginning are different. Meaning, they get a lot of mitigation, a lot of thoughtfulness is put into whether or not this person should be charged. You don't see that for average citizens, especially not the ones we represent, and especially not the ones that come from communities that are of lower means. You know, we do understand that there's a different way of analyzing situations that come from communities where there's more wealth being distributed, because a lot of those people do get different responses from the police. But majority of the people that come into our system are poor people. Majority of the people that come into our system, they don't have that voice from the beginning. They don't seem to, in terms of whether or not they should come into the system, those determinations are not being made on the front end. And when we have a progressive DA, that doesn't mean he can sua sponte understand all of the things that one would bring out from a bail fund perspective, from a human perspective, because they have a lane. They get their information from the police. The police don't take time to go and interview witnesses that may be contrary to the information they have in that report. That's our job. That's the community's job to bring that information to us. And I can tell you, what's been going on in this city is amazing because people like Hara, like Rusty, are volunteering their own time to ensure that people are getting justice that you would envision when you understand that what a criminal justice system should look like. And it is actually making a difference. It is not being publicized, it is not being vocalized enough, but it is making a difference. My lawyers are inspired by the energy and the commitment that is going on by community members who want to be the change they want to see. And we are seeing amazing results through these participatory defense hubs based on what happens on the front end. We just did a study with UPenn, and that was to look at this notion of procedural justice. Has anyone ever heard of that? Procedural justice means, has someone been treated with dignity enough to explain to them the process that they're getting ready to go through so that they feel comfortable that they're not just going to be railroaded and overlooked and I guess racially, I'm trying to figure out the word here, but racially marginalized, but overly criminalized based on their racial makeup. The citizens, the community is stepping up and saying, not this person. This is who this person really is. And police officer, you got it wrong. We've been able to get not guilties. We've been able to get cases totally withdrawn and taken out of this system. That would not happen without the collaboration of the community and their community lawyer. Those are the amazing opportunities we have here in Philadelphia, and that is the energy that we have, and we have to keep it going. So if any of you want to help, please join some of these hubs. And maybe I think we have a slide with all the hubs on it. Join some of these hubs. They need help. They need people that can rotate through there. They need an understanding that they need a commitment from people that if we are going to actually ask for better for our system, we're going to learn what to ask for and demand it from the people that we elect in these positions. So that's what I definitely want to say about that.
Quickly going to piggyback on that. The difference in after 14 years of advocacy is that we have leaders like Keir Gray, we have leaders like Larry Krasner who are finally connecting with the community in a working relationship that's mutually beneficial, where we're sharing collective power. For all over the world, whenever marginalized or oppressed people come out of whatever issue or whatever is holding them, they become fighters. But what is amazing now is that we have leaders who are actually working with the people, among the people, empowering the people. Instead of providing services to us, they are actually empowering us. And so that's actually the difference today.
Yeah.
Question here?
I have a question about algorithms. We heard Hannah Jane Sassaman speaking this evening, and I don't know who to address it to, but you can decide. Some places that do away with the bail system and substitute this algorithm system, which I understand can be very prejudiced against poor people, against people of color. Tell us about algorithms and what we do about that.
All right. I won't say much about algorithms, but I'll talk about what transpired during the time me and Keir were having hearings as members of the Philadelphia Special Committee on Criminal Justice Reform. One of the foremost experts on the algorithm usage is Richard Burke here at the University of Pennsylvania. He's hyper-professionalized, being able to leverage this tool for profit. And the truth of the matter is that there is nothing that will predict accurately human behavior. Not a crystal ball, not an algorithm, or any of those things. So leveraging a tool that's supposed to determine whether or not somebody is a risk or not is just the further professionalization of the system that we use to marginalize people or to drive profits or to cannibalize communities. There's lots of discussion across the entire country at the highest level where algorithms were first introduced in the criminal justice reform space as to what to do, as to how we do it. And the answer is there is no one answer because all communities are very different. We don't have one criminal justice system, we have thousands of them. And so the usage of a tool will be determined upon what kind of energies and efforts the community is using. But for me, and for many of my colleagues, it's just another way for them to, as I indicated, like being hyper-resilient. Instead of actually letting people go from jails, we're going to use the tool differently. But I don't believe any of it because the evidence is that they've been incarcerating people at this rate for a very long time. And I don't see that the system itself is going to stop that practice or stop finding ways to be very sophisticated but still drive people into cages for very long times.
For people who don't know what they are,
Yeah.
I can say a little. Thank you for asking that. This is a really, really important issue for people to know about, and I think is also sometimes a little bit under the radar, that a lot of people might not be aware of what a risk assessment algorithm is or why it's so important to be talking about it right now. At the basic level, and I'm definitely not an expert, so if other folks want to jump in, but a risk assessment algorithm is a computer-based algorithmic tool that would essentially, in this case, we're talking about a pretrial tool, a pretrial risk assessment tool. So it would be given to the judge at that pretrial stage, like at a bail arraignment hearing, and it would use a set of factors to determine whether that person is a high risk, medium risk, or low risk category. The judge would then see that and would make a decision on, whether that person is held pre-trial based on that risk assessment. So why this is so important, as you can imagine, data is not unbiased. There's this illusion that a risk assessment would be less biased than a judge, but the data that's being used in these tools, as we're seeing it across the country, some of the studies that we've been looking at have shown that some of the main factors that are influencing whether someone's put in a high, medium, or low risk categories in similar risk assessment tools are age is one of them, and proxies for race and class, like zip code. Literally, zip code is being used in a lot of places. And history of interactions with the criminal justice system, including arrests, even if it's not conviction, including the first age that you were arrested at, a lot of them go back as far as, say, your family's history of arrest or your family's history of mental health. So it's literally putting into the way that the system is functioning a computer-based algorithm that is going to have similar outcomes to what's already happening, but in some cases worse. In some cases, the tool will result in more people being locked up, and it's also just taking the humanity out of the situation. So, and another thing that we talk about with risk assessment is it's completely not transparent at all to the person who's being judged. Not only because it's a tool that's happening in the dark, but also literally the way the algorithms are built. They call it this forest model of algorithmic, I'm not a data person, but it essentially means it's like a tree model. So if you fit this one, you go that way, and then if you fit that one, you go that way, and then if you fit that one, you go that way. So it's not just, you have these 5 things and therefore you're here. It's a model that you can't even reverse if you wanted to. So it's not transparent to the people that are being judged by it. And it's worth saying also that in Philadelphia, there currently is a risk assessment tool being used. Yeah, and maybe Kira will talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah. So I do want to say this. In our efforts to reform our pretrial system, our justice system partners had agreed early on to use a risk assessment tool. We started to learn more about these tools and then became very deeply concerned about the types of information that we produce, because it does take systemic biases and baked-in racism that the system had always had back from the Jim Crow era, and it rates people based on those types of arrests that were given out to some people that weren't given out to others. Those things are going to be compounded. So what we did, and I guess everything is a step in progress. What you are probably going to see in Philadelphia is a system where judges are using a risk assessment tool. We are...
Not necessarily.
Well, I'm being honest with you. I think as a practical matter, look, there are people that are ready for drastic change, and there are people that need baby steps. And I know in the tables that I'm sitting in, there are judges that are looking for that stopgap. And trying to find ways to make decisions that seem less biased, right? Because, hey, a computer's doing it, so therefore it's not me. If that does happen, which it doesn't have to happen. I'll just digress a bit. We have found, and through the study from UPenn, that when we use a bail advocate, the likelihood of a person, they use a bail advocate as well as what the community does from the community bail funds, engage a person in such a way that it has increased their rate of appearance and decreased their rate of reoffending in that pretrial stage. So honestly, that is the model. There it is. It's just going to take a commitment and some structure and some resources to be put to the people that are willing to actually do it in the human capacity versus a computer algorithm that we pay thousands and $1,000 for it to get it wrong. But inevitably, if we do go to a risk assessment tool, if we do use it as a stopgap, because the places that I'm at do say that this is where we're going, there needs to be one, we say we should have a release assessment tool, right? Trying to figure out what things can be put in place for someone to be released. That's what, if you do use a tool, it should be for release purposes. But secondly, if there ever is a tool, it should be validated every year. Figuring out, is it making the right decisions? And it needs to be validated by a community group. Community should be validating these tools and saying, hey, how do I account for the decisions that you've made? If you've made decisions that people should stay in on bail, and the community bail fund has actually gotten them out, and they've actually come to court, then your tool was wrong. So we need to keep steady on this. We can't let it go. We can't accept the replacement of an assessment tool to say everything is fine. If it is a measure that we're going to have to say, okay, we need some flexibility, we need some compromise, we'll let you try it for a moment, because there has to be compromise with stakeholders, because it's not, look, I want the whole house, but sometimes I have to realize that may come later. But we have to stay vigilant in making sure that whatever we use is just not a farce of criminal justice reform.
I'm teasing my colleague here publicly because we do know that when we're legislating and litigating, that compromise is something that transpires. However, on our side, we want to absolutely not do those sorts of things. Just like in Florida, the work that we led to get the rights of the people to vote in Florida, 1.4 million, there are unfortunately 200. Well, unfortunately, there are more than 200,000 people who are living with arrested convictions, who have served their time, who were excluded. And as a person who is living with a criminal record in this country, how can I compromise that? As a leader who's a professional advocate, of course, when I litigate or I'm legislating, that's something different. But when I'm living, how can you compromise that?
Hi, my name is Brian. And recognizing that D.A. Krasner has become a leader that empowers communities, and a leader that has, or a political institution that has focused on bail reform in his agenda, I was wondering what exactly has, or how has he exactly worked with the Defenders Association of Philadelphia and the No 215 Coalition, because of how the media and how it focuses on sensationalism. It doesn't really cover bail reform. So I just wanted some clarity, and I just wanted some, I guess.
So, Larry is a friend of the Defender Association because he is a leader that makes things much more possible than it has ever been before with anybody in that seat. But that doesn't mean the problems are solved. And what we had was a court watch program that people volunteered their time, and they came in and they watched arraignment court proceedings. And they found areas of improvement for all of us in the system, the district attorney's office, the public defender, and the courts, that we could be doing to improve the likelihood that people are treated fairly, and that the decisions are being made not based on the biases that are in the system, but based on the actual opportunities that people have to be treated like the Constitution says they should. What Larry has done is he has taken kind of some of the minor misdemeanors and said, my office will no longer ask for bail on these small misdemeanor cases. Now, there's always three legs to a stool in the criminal justice system. There's the defense, there's the prosecution, and there's courts. Just because Larry's representative and our representative agree that bail should not be placed on this particular person, the courts still have the final say. And there's often times where Larry's representative and our representative agree on a release for a person that the courts still put bail on that individual. So Larry has some say, but it's not the end-all be-all to decisions that are being made at that level. So this is why we're forcing or asking community to come in and force them to look at you and say, I'm going to continue to lock people up in your community, even though you're demanding better from this system. That's what seems to be pushing these judges to a different level, because that has all been done in private before. But now with community coming in, watching, making report cards, making recommendations public and transparent, we're seeing incremental changes, but we still have a long way to go.
I'll just say very briefly, you asked about the community involvement with Larry Krasner also. I mean, obviously it was largely community that elected Krasner and got him in that position.
Not largely, it was.
Yes, you're right.
We put him there.
Yeah. And a lot of folks on the inside who were behind bars organizing to make that happen, I'll say. But yeah, I mean, the No 215 Jail Coalition was part of the Coalition for Just DA as part of it. So for folks who don't know what that is, just very briefly, Larry Krasner's made a pretty sizable commitment for a co-governance model with a coalition of community grassroots organizers to be essentially governing with him and influencing policy, and has turned to many community members as experts on issues as well. So in that process, it's been a success for us.
I do want to add one thing that I think is really important. Larry's a friend and a colleague. Larry was defending people for free before many of us were engaged in this work. Larry has now been, he volunteered, and then he was propelled into the position to hold that space. I think that as advocates and as movement members, we need to reorient our relationship with power today in the district attorney's office. Colleagues is ready, willing, and able to leverage every asset and every tool of that office to drive the systemic change that he was working for before he was elected, and what he wants during the time he's in office and during the time afterwards. So we know that the position has been adversarial to communities, but we should definitely work to reimagine what it would be like to have a colleague or a person who's been trying to drive this work for 30 years in office, and then consider the ways in which we can support or work collaboratively with his capacity and Keir's capacity. And yes, we need to do judges, so that way we will continuously have enough power to force the systemic change that we want all the way through.
I would say one thing, but you gotta learn the system, because you won't know what a just DA is unless you understand the types of things that a DA has control over. So a lot of people say, we want a just DA, and we say, what is a just DA? And they can't really answer those specific questions. Well, the public defenders are the best people to measure whether or not a just DA is making an actual difference in the cases that we see day in and day out. We see them, we work with them, we do the same thing on the opposite side. So therefore, when we're talking about how is it working, look, I want to see more change in this system. We still have the same caseloads. We still are fighting the same fights. We still are arguing for the same things. So there has to be another leg to this. It can't just be a Larry Krasner. He's a piece of the puzzle, but he's not the only solution. You have to join. Community has to be involved. Participatory events has allowed people to see specifically the things that they thought had stopped. And they're not. These things are still going on. Larry's one person. He has a 600-person office, all who have decision-making abilities. all who may not have the same vision and understanding that he has when it comes to recognizing things that they say they want to stop. You say you want to stop criminalizing children? Then do that. Don't bring a child who's 13 years old in the system for playing with a $3.50 plastic gun and say because it's for the community's protection. What you just did, and I just saw The Hate U Give this weekend, and what I learned from that movie is what that is. When they say thug life, the hate you give little infants, F's everyone. That means when you put things, negativity, trauma into a kid, you get back what you put in. So when you put a 13-year-old into this system, handcuff him, take him to a police district for 10 hours, transfer him to a juvenile detention facility for 3 days, put him on house arrest, treat him like a criminal, that to me is not reform. So everyone has to be on board in order for this system to reform. And that is what we're waiting to see.
I have a question here.
Yes, good evening. My name is Paul Ricker. And I would like to say it really meant a lot to me that the evening started with the statements from Elder DeBruz that focused this on a faith-based issue. There's a moral underpinning to this, and I think that feeds us all. It means a lot to me. I'm a person of faith. There are at least 2 members from my faith group here, the Society of Friends, and we have testimonies that include community and equality. That said, I've heard words about efficiency, politics, and economics. So my questions are related to, can you explain to me the people that are making money off of this system, the people that provide cash, is that a money-making operation? I'm not talking about this woman up here that has this organization that helps. That's a business, I think. And is that an empowered business that's going to fight this change? And the prisons are an industry now. Can you explain us how we're up against, or what we're up against, and what can we do now? Is this a city council issue? Do I talk to my councilman? Where do I go to actually start advocating to make this change? We're talking about eliminating cash bail. I heard about some minor steps in 5 type of crimes now don't require bail. Are there other crimes you want to add to that list? Anything you can. I mean, I came here to learn and to find out what the heck I can do with my little bit of energy left as an old man.
Thank you, and I'll just point out we only have about 5 minutes, so however you want to handle those 5 minutes. There will be an opportunity to talk individually afterwards.
Hi, Rusty Bentley. Very sentimental. Listen, I'm in a community, low income, disability mother. I have a daughter. She works with children. And she was in a car accident and someone was hurt badly. And they come to get her 2 years later. We couldn't afford a lawyer, and we went to, they helped us turn herself in. They donated a lawyer, which we were able to pay a couple dollars a month, which is great. They also sent us in with a pastor, which also participated in their funds for her bill, and also for the lawyer. And what I'm here to say is, we need this. I'm a single parent with 4 children. I'm not a troubled person. I mean, I'm affiliated with the children in my neighborhood. I also make sure the children are safe going to school. And also, I'm also dealing with my abandonment in my life from being incarcerated from my children. I go to therapy every week now. The system traumatizes us to come back. I have some years clean now from alcohol, negativity. But now I'm struggling with my daughter, which is trying to go back to school. She went this morning for CPR test. She's working with the kids, and she's on house arrest. These people put her on house arrest. She had to afford to pay for her test. She didn't get paid to go to this test and the classes. And she called me today and she said, "Mom, I'm not getting paid." And she said, and then she has to be in at 7, but she be in at 5 because of the buses, and it's like, we're struggling, and not just me, her, our community, and I'm that parent, I'm that sister, I'm that grandma that I would like to stand for the help and the participation. If it's just a voice, some understanding. I was very illiterate to ask a lawyer, where do I go? What do I say? And we would appreciate, because as long as I'm here and God has me on this earth, I'm going to continue to be able to sit higher in this seat and protect our mothers, grandmothers, sisters, aunts, even uncles, grandfathers. Because we can't continue to let our children and our family members, neighbors, be corrupted for no reason at all. I was incarcerated, but just walking with someone that was drinking a beer, and I didn't have my ID. And I just wanted to thank you all for your listening.
What she said is real, and just being here and understanding the issues allows you to really articulate what you want from your elected officials. This is a state legislative issue. The state legislature has to take bail off of the determination factors. Currently, right now, there are 4 different ways to deal with someone pretrial. Putting cash bail on them is the last resort. Our judges now use that as the first resort. So the ACLU has threatened to sue them if they didn't start using what's currently in the bail statute, or the pretrial statute, which is you look for opportunities to release, you look for opportunities to release with conditions, or then there's another one I can't remember right now, but then you would move to cash bail if necessary. But you have to ask for a person's ability to pay the bail in making a determination of what type of bail one would put on. We're currently not even following that. But what Jersey did and what DC did is they removed bail altogether as a factor. And so they forced their jurisdictions to create a new pretrial system that has a presumption of release first. Most people are released. Some people are released with certain conditions, but most people are released. And if they are not going to be released, it's by motion of the district attorney that would move to say, I want this person detained because whatever is in their history and past will threaten public safety and they will not return to court. That then triggers a hearing as to whether or not that is accurate and not just relying on the facts on the paper, but also bringing in evidence and information where we truly explore whether or not a person is a danger to their community, so much so that they cannot be released pre-trial. That is a more equitable system. That is a system that will not presume, based on someone's race or based on other biased things, that they should be locked up before they even found to be guilty of that charge. But it also ensures that people are treated fairly and with dignity. And when research has shown, when you're out fighting your case, your opportunities for better outcomes are there, and you're making sure you're not forcing people into pleas because they are now in a state of desperation where they've got to get back to their families and their lives, and that is real. We see people making those determinations every day. I didn't do anything, but I'll take this deal. And living with those records when they don't believe that they deserve it is really hard.
You take it home, Karen?
Yeah. I just wanted to directly answer the first part of your question. What are we up against? I'm not going to get into that right now because we only have a couple minutes. Watch the movie 13th. I'd highly recommend that documentary. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I think folks know about the prison industrial complex, but what you can do now, I do want to talk about. I think Keir did a great job of laying out this vision of transformative bail reform. We don't want wealth-based detention. We don't want detainers. We don't want risk assessment. We know a lot of what we don't want, but what we do want is things like the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. We want things where people are actually able to get their own people free from the system and to offer the support that's needed. And as a white person who comes from some class privilege who's involved in this work, I actually see it as my responsibility because I've inherited the wealth of generations of ancestors before me. I come from a middle class background, but I also know that it's not an accident that nobody in my family ended up in jail. It's not because we're better than other people. And if you believe that the reason you have not gone to jail, the reason that you have the money that you have, is because of how hard you've worked, and that that's better than other people, then I think that's like a little bit of your process to work through here too, that I've had to work through too. And I think we have to move from this place of feeling shame or guilt into actually stepping up in action, and also reparations and redistributing resources. So, and just to offer this, I'm gonna put Rusty on the spot here. When I walked in here, there was a $20 bill in the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, only one $20 bill. And I walked over and Rusty said, "I just donated."
Oh, Rusty,
And I was like, "What now? You already donated all your time." I met Rusty because Rusty called me because her loved one was in jail and she wanted to bail her out. That's how we met, and we became friends and started organizing together. And Rusty just donated her $20 bill here, which I'm sure could have gone to her kid or someone else. And so then I donated too, and I donate like 50 hours of my week to this work. So all I'm saying is, money is actually really important here, and one thing that I feel hopeful about is that through this organizing, I have realized we do not have a scarcity of resources. We just don't. We have an abundance, and it's just in certain hands and not in others. And the more that money moves from the people who have it to the people who need it and deserve it right now, the more we're going to see change. So anyone in this room, if you're able to donate now, if you're able, our website is phillybailout.com. And you can donate online, you can be a monthly sustainer, you can also donate your time. We need volunteers, we have a lot of work to do. Did you want to add?
Thank you, Rusty.
Yes, Philadelphia Cash Bailout. I'm going to be that source. When we are able to help someone, I'll be that source to direct them to mental health, or a community for your child, or a little ear, a hug. The system can get you.
Yes.
But I became strong and liable now. I can stand down and help when I didn't get the help. Thank you.
Before we close and we have a chance to talk individually, can you just tell us about the hubs real quickly? What's been up there so we know what that is?
Yes. So these are the locations of the participatory defense hubs. We don't have the days that they run. They run different days of the week.
Go to the website.
Yes. There's a There's a Facebook page.
There we go. Participatory Defense Philly. Sorry. Hi, I'm Randy Nason with the Defender. The South Philly Hub meets on Mondays, and they have their own Facebook page. And we are, within the next day or so, launching one where we'll have a full schedule. Mothers in Charge in Center City meets on Tuesdays at 6 to 8. And King Sessing is on Thursday evenings from 6 to 8. And anybody can come to volunteer, or anybody who's supporting a loved one who has a case or has a case themselves can come and get help.
And what it does is what Rusty said. It allows you to make better decisions, and it helps you through this process that's often very, very confusing, and you're going through this in a very traumatized state, so it's hard for you to navigate it yourself. And we get much better outcomes from it by doing it together. So, Rusty, I know you can attest to that, and I thank you for saying that.
Before we end with a round of applause for their guests, I just want to remind you that there is literature on the back right table, there's some literature on the left table, there is a petition you can sign to end cash bail, there are refreshments, we urge you to eat them so we don't have to take them home, and our guests can stay a little bit to talk individually. So let me just say thank you to Kier and Kurt and Kara and Rusty and Bill. The work continues. Help out. Money to be put with two things in the right title. Thank you.